Okay. I'm going to make this introduction very quick because we're starting late due to the fire alarm. Professor Deliang Wang is here to give a talk. He's very well known. He was the IEEE Distinguished Lecturer 2010, 2012. We're very honored to have him here. You can see in an announcement of his talk what kind of awards he has, and the topic today is the title right here. So Deliang. Thank you very
much. It's a real pleasure to be here. And I'll obviously cut some of the slides so we'll finish on time. And so the topic of my presentation is on generalization of classification-based speech separation. And so this is an outline of my talk. So the first, I'll set up the stage about generalization. Generalization is an issue. A lot of you, particularly if you're interested in supervised learning, you know that's a perennial issue. Anytime you do supervised learning, it's going to face generalization problem. Why do we face this problem? So first, we talk about we're treating this problem of speech separation, which is also known as a cocktail party problem. That's a long-standing challenge in the field. It's still very much a big difficulty in the speech and signal processing field. So we're going to take a new approach to this old challenge. The old challenge is the cocktail party problem. The new approach is the classification-based approach. Because of this introduction of classification-based approach to this old challenge, so that creates new problems because we try a new approach to this old problem. And that challenge is the generalization challenge. But first, I'll set up a stage by first introduce this notion of ideal binary mask. Then I'll introduce some of the initial classification-based methods to the speech separation problem. Then I'll move on to the theme of my talk, which is on generalization. I'll basically talk about two ways of dealing with them. The first approach is adaptation-based approach. How do we adapt already trained models to new signal-noise ratio levels, and how do we adapt to new noises, which is a very, very difficult problem. Then I'll also be talking about expansive or expanding training through deep neural networks. All right, so let's just first talk about this notion of ideal binary mask. This is a notion that we introduced in my lab about 10 years ago. This is actually based on a very pervasive perceptual phenomenon called auditory masking. Roughly speaking, we know that you can divide our hearing frequency range into about 2,000 or so-called critical bands. And we also know that this is a very basic psychophysics, that if you have two tones or two sounds that fall into the same critical band, then the louder sound tends to mask the weaker sound. That's called masking phenomena, which is, as I say, is a very, very basic phenomena in auditory perception. Now, what happens is that once masking takes place, the weaker sounds actually has been completely obliterated from your auditory system perspective. So as if the weaker sound never occurred, even though if you look at the signal itself, the weaker sound is there. If you mix the weaker sound, the stronger sound, you see a mixture signal. But to our perception, weaker sound is gone. There's no trace of it. So the one auditory masking takes place, actually, you don't hear anything that is being masked. And now, based on this fundamental phenomena, that we introduced the ideal binary mask at the beginning as a computational goal for the field of computational auditory C analysis. Computational auditory C analysis is one of the major approaches to sound separation, along with speech enhancement, along with spatial filtering through beamforming. So those are the three primary approaches to sound separation. And so the key idea is that we want to retain parts of the mixture where the target is stronger than the interference. And we want to discard the rest of it. So why do we want to do that? The idea is, again, if you follow auditory masking, there's no harm to keep the weaker interference there as long as you manage to retain the stronger target. So in other words, you let your ear to do the rest of the job. You keep both the stronger target and the weaker interference, We don't try to separate them. We just keep both of them. And we know that our ears are able to do the job of masking the weaker signal. So that's one situation where the target is stronger than interference. The other situation where target is weaker than interference, then in that case, we know the target is essentially unrescuable. You cannot get it because target would have been masked by the interference. So in that case, there is nothing to gain by keeping anything there. Just throw it away. So this is it's a very basic notion. From a mathematical standpoint, it's very simple. It comes down to a binary matrix. So that's the definition of ideal binary mask. You decompose the signal into a time frequency representation. No matter what's your favorite representation, most popular one obviously is spectrogram, and in the CASA domain, people use colloquium more than spectrogram, but it doesn't really matter. What it matters is that you represent a mixture signal as a time frequency representation. Then you calculate within each TF unit, time frequency unit, a fundamental signal. You measure the signal-noise ratio, then you compare that signal-noise ratio with a threshold, theta. So theta is also known as the local SNR criterion, LC value, which is typically set to 0 dB. Now, 0 dB, what does that mean? 0 dB means that the target, whether target is stronger than interference, is a very, very simple thing, right? So all we define here is a very simple binary matrix called ideal binary matrix, or ideal binary mask. And that's the computational goal. So according to what we just described, if you want to separate sound, all you need to do is to get this binary matrix. Now the question immediately would arise, would it be sufficient, right? So we now simplify from a arbitrary matrix into a binary matrix. Would it be sufficient? But before we get to the adequacy here, it actually has a very nice mathematical property called optimality. So of all the binary matrices, how many binary matrices do we have? It's almost infinite, right? Because it's 2 to the number of time frequency units. So this is basically an infinite number of binary matrices you can construct. Even though we talk about binary matrix, it still is too many. But out of all of them, ideal binary mask, which is one single matrix, this one matrix has the highest signal-noise ratio. So if your goal is to improve signal-noise ratio using binary masking, then the binary matrix that's defined as ideal binary matrix gives you the highest signal-noise ratio. That's why it's called ideal, right? Ideal is in two senses. One is that in order to construct this, you have to know what is the target, what is the interference to start with. Obviously, this is something that's ideal information that you don't have in reality. But also, it has optimality, which is that it gives you a high signal-noise ratio. But the key thing is that it does not actually separate the mixture. So what do I mean here? So let's just play a sound demo here. This is a time frequency representation of a single utterance.
Primitive tribes have an upbeat attitude.
Only the best players enjoy popularity.
Sorry about this. Yeah. Sounds fine. Okay, if I play the mixture.
Only the best players
have an
enjoy
upbeat
popularity.
attitude.
Sounds good, actually. Sounds pretty good. All right. So the basic idea is that if you do the masking, you take the mixture, you're not doing anything to the mixture. All you do, you have two colors. One color is green, as you can see here. Green colors the time frequency regions where the target is weaker than the interference. The unobstructed views of the target are the regions where target is stronger than interference. So if you do binary masking, what you end up is this one. You just zero out the green regions. You take the remaining ones. So I need to play one more sound. Can I do it? Okay. All right. So this is the one that if you apply the binary mask to the mixture.
Primitive tribes have an upbeat attitude.
Yeah. So this is you can. All right. So I'm going to be I don't need audio for a few slides. Okay, so that's your impression that if you have a signal-noise ratio, which is 0 dB, if I tell you to focus on one of the talkers, if you have normal hearing, that you shouldn't have any problem. Now, but that's the intuition, but this actually has been tested in a series of psychophysical studies or speech intelligibility studies. I have shown that if you apply the ideal binary mask to a mixture, you're going to get a large amount of speech intelligibility improvements. It's actually very compelling. This has been tested on both normal hearing listeners and hearing impaired listeners. Has been tested on stationary noise as well as modulated noise. So for stationary noise, you can get about more than 7 decibels improvement for normal hearing listeners. For hearing impaired listeners, you can get more than 9 decibel improvement. For those of you who know about this is actually a measure based on the so-called speech reception threshold. So 1 decibel improvement already amounts to about 10 to 15% in terms of percentage improvements. So 7 to 9 decibel improvements, we're talking about days and nights. So from 0% intelligibility to close to 100% intelligibility. Another, if you're interested in helping people with hearing loss, that is actually improvement for modulated noise is actually higher than the improvement for stationary noise. So this is kind of has the profile that counteracts the profiles of typical hearing loss. Typical hearing loss, so we know that the loss is higher when you have non-stationary noise. The loss is higher when you have modulated background noise. So this is basically gives us the approach. The approach is that if you think ideal binary mask is a worthy computational goal, then speech separation becomes binary classification, right? All you need to figure out is to take the mixture signal and classify them into 2 classes. So we have a collection of time frequency units. We need to put this collection into 2 classes. One is speech dominant or target dominant. Another is interference dominant. So that's all what you need to do, and that's the establishment of the approach. And so I'm going to just quickly go through, actually, let me run this demo, then I go through the computational studies about how do you actually compute the mask estimation. So you can actually take this. This, I think, to me, is a very, very interesting psychophysical phenomena, where you can actually do the manipulation of ideal masking to the extreme, where you don't actually have any target speech in the mixture. Because we know there is a basic equality where if you co-vary the mixture SNR and the local SNR threshold or LC value, then the mask is the same. So you can either increase signal-noise ratio or decrease signal, but mask itself doesn't change. So based on this, we basically said, okay, why don't we just take the signal-noise ratio to the extreme negative? The extreme negative means that you don't have any target in it, just pure background noise. And you still can compute a binary mask. So here you see there's a bunch of binary patterns here. So what I'm going to play with to you is that I overlay these binary patterns on top of speech-shaped noise, on top of stationary background noise. Does anybody recognize what words are these patterns? You shouldn't be able to, right, unless you're trained this. So this looks like those are distinct patterns. And now I'm going to play this pattern overlaying on top of this noise. Can I play now? Okay, good. Okay, yeah. So just to show you, this is speech-shaped noise. It's background noise, so there's nothing there. All right, so this is the noise modulated by a binary matrix or binary matrices.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0.
So you hear patterns. Okay, all right. So because of time, I'm going to actually zip this part pretty quickly. So once this notion was established, there was one of the first studies that take this approach to see whether you can actually estimate ideal binary matrix with some level of quality. That's a study by Kim et al. Published in 2009, so it's 4 years ago. And all they did is that they extract one single feature out of a time frequency unit called amplitude modulation spectrum feature, or AMS feature. And then they perform classification using Gaussian mixture models, or GMMs. And what's different from most of the other, almost all other studies that do speech separation, that they actually test on human listeners, which is, by all measures, a higher bar. It's a more difficult, more stringent measure compared to, say, just measuring signal-noise ratio or automatic speech recognition. All right, so this is a diagram of the model. Because you do classification, more or less dictates that you actually separate tasks into two different stages. One is a training stage, another is a test stage. So the training stage, the good thing is that you actually have access to the ideal binary mask, because in training you actually have the target signal and the background noise before they mix together. So you just take this one, you calculate the signal-noise ratio, then you compare the SNR with a threshold. If it is less than the threshold, we know that's noise dominant. If it is greater than threshold, that's target dominant. So you put this time frequency units into two bins. One bin is lambda 0, another bin is lambda 1. Now they model each bin as a Gaussian mixture model. Once the modeling is done, the GMM parameters are estimated, then it becomes the operational stage or the enhancement stage. So the enhancement stage, obviously, you don't have anything. All you can do is that you extract amplitude modulation spectrum features, AMS features. Then send the AMS feature to these two already built models, lambda 0 and lambda 1. Each one of them will tell you what is the likelihood, because the GMM gives you the likelihood. Then if you also estimate prior probability, then you can get Bayesian, make a Bayesian decision, which is which one has a higher posterior probability. And that is the metrics they have computed. So this is not ideal metrics anymore, but it's an estimate metric through classification technique. So I'm going to just skip the details. So so I just show you this is really the first ever study to demonstrate that you actually can construct a monoral speech separation system algorithm that leads to significant human speech intelligibility improvement. So they have tested on both, this is IEEE sentences, there's a male speaker, there's a female speaker. There's different conditions, different SNRs, and so on. The most dramatic improvement is on this condition. The background noise is babble. The input SNR is minus 5 dB. We know the minus 5 dB babble is hot. Okay. If you don't do anything, the human listeners get close to 20% correct out of the IEEE sentences. But if you use the estimated binary mask to synthesize from the mixture, that they get something close to, it's better than 75%. So we talk about an improvement which is close to 60 percentage points improvement. So this is a large amount of improvements. The rest of it don't have as much improvements, not because the algorithm doesn't do well, just because the baseline is higher. If you don't do anything, the baseline is pretty high, so there's relatively little room to improve. So I think this study deserves a lot of credit in terms of being the first ever monoral separation algorithm to improve human speech intelligibility. So we published a subsequent study, partly motivated by their study. And this study is essentially to use the support vector machines. Because the Gaussian mixture models, we know the Gaussian mixture models are the so-called generative classifiers. And typically speaking, if you do classification, that you will be better off by using a discriminative classifier. So SVM, of course, is a standard classification technique. And I'm not going to spend much time talking about it. But basically, we substitute their GMM classifier by a SVM classifier. We also use an additional feature, which is pitch-based feature. So they use AMS feature. We still use AMS feature because AMS feature has a nice property that actually applies to both voice speech and unvoiced speech. Now, pitch-based features obviously can only apply to voiced speech. So we decided to just use two kinds of features. Now, the simple thing about classification, it doesn't really matter. You just append the input feature dimensions. So previously, there was, let's say, 30 dimensions, I'm going to use 2 more dimensions for pitch. That's very, very easy. And as you would expect, that this is going to do better. And I'm not going to have time to display, but this paper was published last year in JASA. And there's a very strong improvement over their baseline system. But more importantly, because of the use of the pitch feature, that actually enabled the system to generalize better to unseen noises. So this is the 2 noises that we used, which previously were not used in training. One is white noise, another is cocktail party noise. So also we use these 2 kinds of noises, which previously were not used, and you compare the hit minus FA rate, which is, I didn't have time to go through. The hit minus FA, so the K-metal study has another contribution, is that they're showing that it's not just classification accuracy that correlates with human speech intelligibility, but the hit rate subtracted by the false alarm rate is actually correlates with human speech intelligibility better. So they have been advocating the use of hit minus FA, and that's exactly what we use here. So if you compare hit minus FA and new noises, you can see that our system gives a very sizable improvement over their system. It can be as high as 20 to 30 percentage points. Okay. All right, so as I said, I'm going to just jump to I think what I'm going to skip the adaptation methods, because my most recent work is on the DN, the deep neural networks, so that's something I'm most enthusiastic about. So I'm going to just, because of time's sake. So basic idea is that you can actually, in terms of adaptations, that if you have trained models on specific conditions, you can actually, when you have a new mixture come in, which you know the new mixture may or may not be the same as previous noises or previous signal noise ratios, but you can do some analysis. Here what we'll do is actually basically statistical and analyze the the histograms. From histogram analysis, you can actually predict what is the right kind of decision boundaries you should utilize, because this is still in the support vector machine framework. What is the decision boundary you should utilize, and that improves over doing nothing. So the baseline here is that if you just train in one condition, test on a different condition. If you didn't do adaptation, the performance is okay but not great. But if you do adaptation, that performance is going to be improved. So that's the basic thing. But what I'm going to talk about is the expanded training, because actually the most straightforward way of dealing with generalization, which is the theme of the talk, is to train on a variety of noises. This is the approach that has been adopted in many pattern successful classification paradigms, like automatic speech recognition, right? Truly, the automatic speech, the success comes from large amounts of training. You have large amounts of label data, and you train large models, and the more data you have, the more training you do, the performance tends to be better. So this is the approach we're currently taking. We're going to train on large amounts of noise and large amounts of different acoustic conditions. Now, but there's a problem, which if you stick to support vector machine classifiers, we know that kernel machines, for kernel machine, large-scale training is actually almost intractable. I'm going to get to the computational complexity analysis. But basically, all these machines, the support vector machines, generally speaking, they are about quadratic to cube relationship with respect to training set. And for neural networks, for multi-layer perceptrons, that's really deep networks as well. For multi-layer perceptrons, the complexity is over the product of the size of the model, which is how many layers you're going to have, how many parameters, and the number of training samples. So in terms of the number of training samples, it's a linear relationship as opposed to quadratic or cubic relationship. So that's why even though DNs are well known to be very slow, by the way, how many of you heard about DN, deep neural networks? Well, there's a few. It's actually, in case you wonder about, this is the hardest thing in neural networks and machine learning now in terms of effective classification. Okay, so basically we propose to use DN to learn more linearly separable features that will still couple that with SVM, but we're not going to use kernel SVM. We just use linear SVM. Well, we know the linear SVM gives you the it still has the advantage of giving you the largest separation margin, and it's very, very simple to run. Computation, there is no problem. So basically, we use DNN to learn features, more representative, more discriminative features. And the framework, I'm going to skip a lot of the justification about DNNs. So basically, what we do here is that we use deep neural network as subband classifier. And we know that you have a noisy speech coming, you through cochlear filtering, you decompose it into a set of filter channels. And then within each filter channel, you build a classifier, just like previously, people have used SVMs, people have used GMM models, and people have also used, just the regular multi-perceptrons. And now instead here, we train the DNN for feature learning from raw acoustic features. The training is done in a standard way. The DNN training is you divide the training into two stages. One is the unsupervised training stage, where that's called the pre-training. And once pre-training is completed, then you have a supervised training stage. And once this both is done, then what we do is that we actually use the raw input plus the last hidden layer as the input to the subband SVM. So that's the classifier we actually use. So we couple the representative features through deep neural network with the linear SVM. So that's the classifier we have. And this is a pilot study. Basically, we try to verify whether this is going to pay off. Clearly, the performance is paying off. This is actually a study which was published a couple of months ago in the Transactions and also in last year's NIPS conference. And we also verified in terms of how many hidden layers you should use. So we find actually you just need to have 2 hidden layers. So even though it's a deep structure, but it's not very deep, it's 2 hidden layers. More hidden layers doesn't pay off. But pre-training clearly gives you a major boost in terms of performance. So in other words, if you just do a straightforward multi-perceptron learning, you're not doing very well. Okay, so this is the final system we get. We actually train on 200 randomly chosen utterances from both male and female speakers with 100 environmental noises. That gives you 20,000 mixtures. But in terms of the number of training samples, for each single channel, we have about 6 million so-called fully dense training samples. That means that the feature vectors don't have a lot of zeros in it. So this is something that you wouldn't be able to do using support vector machines. And this is the results. Just one word is that it clearly gives you the state-of-the-art results, and compared with a speech enhancement method that was previously was considered the state-of-the-art. We actually improved by 3 to 5 decibels for all the 20 noises. But the key here is that these 20 noises have not been used previously in the training. So this is a new learning. Okay. Can I do last sound demo? All right. Okay. All right. So I'll just give you just to play 2 demos. Complete. Okay. This is for a 0 dB case. What is a 2.5 dB? This is a mixture.
She called his name many times.
This is unprocessed.
She called his name many times.
You can hear the background noise is very much reduced. But this is one of the pilot tests we actually run on human listeners. So I'm going to play, just this is the last demo, okay? I'm going to play a mixture, which is one word, a common English word, that is buried in this sentence. You will say a question mark word. Okay, I'm going to play the mixture first to see if you can hear that word. Anybody hear that word? Any guess? Let me play one more time. Okay, this is a separated one.
You will say shoe.
You say shoe. And we have the subject improvement ready is competitive. Okay, so I'm going to just jump to the conclusion. Okay. So this is somewhat abbreviated talk. So what I try to get out is that first we formulate this problem, this long-standing challenge of cocktail party problem, as a classification problem. So we turn a traditional signal processing problem into a supervised learning problem. I think this is a very fundamental shift. The second is that once you deal with supervised learning, then the issue of generalization is unavoidable. That's why ASR, even though despite success, ASR has lots of troubles where you have conditions that are not used in the training situations, including the troubles of background noise, right? So how do we generalize to different situations? It's a very important. I would say it's the key problem. We have described two methods. One is adaptation method. I didn't spend much time, but really the expanded training through deep neural networks. I think this is a very promising approach. All right, well, thank you for your attention, and sorry about all the troubles with the sound demos.
We have time for a question or two. Yes.
When you augmented the feature set with the output of the deep neural networks, I didn't quite catch whether the new information you were using at the last stage, was it the activation levels at the last hidden layer or the weights?
It's the activation levels. So it's actually just take the, right, so the question, I'm supposed to repeat it. So the question was that when we use deep neural networks, we use the last hidden layer as the input to the linear SVM. Do we use the weights or do we use the activation levels, right? So the answer is that we use activation levels, but we also complement that with the raw input. So this is where I didn't have time to talk about DN. DN also has issues, and there's skepticism on deep neural networks. Part of it is because of there's a lot of there's seemingly ad hoc aspects. So this is one of that, because in theory you should only need to use the last hidden layer activations. That's presumably gives you the most abstract representations. But in practice, we find out, as other people have found out too, that if you use the raw input along with last hidden layer activations, you get better results. This is hard to explain, but that's practice.
Time for another question? Well, I have one. When you talk about the modulation spectrum,
right?
Okay, amplitude modulation spectrum. Can you quickly describe what that is?
Right. So this is actually something I was going to. If I had more time, I would have remarked it a little more. Right. So the amplitude modulation features that are used in the original K-metal study. I know that modulation has been studied very extensively in Les lab and so on. What they do that they take a signal. Because this is actually part of the motivation of using a colloquium rather than a spectrogram, because spectrogram at time frequency unit is just two numbers, amplitude and phase. So for the colloquium, a time frequency unit is actually a signal there. It's just a short signal. So what they use, they use a 32 millisecond signal out of a particular filter. Then they just take the magnitude of the signal and then they run another FFT to it, and then they combine some of the nearby FFT responses. So eventually they come up with a 15-dimensional modulation spectrum. Mm-hmm. So each time frequency unit in K-metal study becomes a 15-dimensional feature. Mm-hmm. And then also couple that with the deltas is a typical thing. The deltas, the difference between this 15-dimensional feature versus the previous 15-dimensional feature, the previous time frame. And also couple that with the frequency across the frequency.
Now that then is used to design the mask. Is that correct?
Exactly. That is used as a feature.
As a feature.
As a feature for the classifier.
I see.
Yeah. So they don't actually use the modulated spectrum for sound separation. They simply use them as extractive features. As I think that's So I discussed in the morning. I think this is a different way of using modulations-based representations. Actually, we don't. So in this case, we're not interested in how to reconstruct the signal back, but we actually just use them as discriminative features, so that we can actually calculate the binary mask or ratio mask, if you like. But once you get a mask, you can actually you take the standard approach. You can recover the original domain signal.
Okay, so it's the mask. It's the design of the mask and comes from features.
Exactly.
Which are related.
And that's the features, and they find that the modulation features are very effective.
Okay.
And I think that sort of popularized the use of the AMS features in the classification domain.
A little different than what we did, but I'm not sure. We'll have
Yeah, not sure exactly, but it's something we
we need to talk about.
Exactly.
Okay. So I'm going to end it now. Some people have classes to go to. I think there's a class coming in. Let's thank our speaker.
Thank you.